Hello there. So if you're new at jelly printing and you'd like to learn some basic techniques about brayer, the gel plate, the basic supplies that you need, then this video is for you. Don't go yet. If you're not new at jelly printing and you would like to watch me make some pretty botanicals, which I do, all kinds of pretty botanicals, then stick around because I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm also going to show you how to make just some simple black and whites on deli paper, which are see-through when you glue them down, and they are awesome. So if that sounds like how you'd like to spend about a half an hour or so, then come on over here because that's what I'm going to do. See ya. All right, everyone. I've received a couple of requests from viewers to show some basic gel printing techniques, what I use, why I use it, why I like it. I've also received request on how to make these black and white see-through gel prints using botanicals. And these are all of these images I'm going to show you were made from weeds out in my yard. So I think that sounds like a fun project because even though this looks complicated, it's not. So what I have on my table today are what I think are the necessities that you need to start this process. So the first thing that I have is an 8x10 gel plate that I purchased probably 7 years ago. It's got a lot of miles on it, but I don't think you can kill these things. I've heard of almost nobody that's ever killed them. So 8x10, which I find to be the most versatile size. I as well have a fairly new 5x7 that I like simply because it's a tight little thing. And if you want to play around with making, I don't know, like for instance, greeting cards featuring some of these botanicals, then you can do that on this little plate. You can also do it here, but this just kind of, it's a centered little thing. The next thing you will need is a brayer. I am using a speedball brayer with a lot of miles on it. These brayers are soft. You're going to see several different kinds of them online, but what you want is a soft brayer. What I like about this particular one is that this pops out in case you, I don't know, get a lot of baby's breath embedded into the paint and you want to soak the paint off. So having said that, the way that I clean my brayer when I'm gel printing is on a book or a piece of paper just to roll it off. The only time I ever clean it to try to peel the paint off of it is when I have not taken care of it and it gets a lot of junk embedded in it. So Murphy's oil soap, if it ever happens, Murphy's oil soap is the way to go. The next thing that you'll need besides a gel plate and a brayer is something to roll paint off. So I use photocopy paper. I use junk mail. A lot of the paper that I use for roll-offs is stuff that I have that's already been printed on. I also like using a book because what ends up happening when you use your book for a roll-off sheet, let's see if I thought I was better organized here, you can get some very interesting, and you'll, I challenge someone to count how many times I say interesting in this video today. I'd like to know, I'm sure it's dozens. But you get some roll-offs that are, what am I going to do without that word, that are fun to look at and can turn into some very expressive art. I'm already challenged. These were all used on roll-off sheets with just a little bit of white paint and some weeds from the outside. Last thing that you are going to need is some kind of paint. So I have a lot of Liquitex Basics paint, and I have a tendency to work in a fairly structured colorway because I like the colors that I get. And I've only learned that, by the way, since hanging out with you guys. So I've got some Mars Black, some Parchment, Payne's Gray, a little bit of Titanium White. I have moved my yellow ochre out of these tubes and into this squeezy bottle, which I'm quite pleased about. And if you don't have these kinds of paints and you have a bunch of crafts paint, use those. Use what you have. Pretty much any kind of paint is going to work on a gel plate, including gouache and watercolor, and pretty much any number of different kinds of paints are going to work on a gel plate. So use what you have. So in order to begin gel printing, the first thing that you might want to learn how to do is to figure out how much paint is enough and how much paint is too much. And let me tell you, after doing this a great deal for, a few years, I don't know how to tell you that. I can tell you that what I can show you today will only be learned by repetition and by making some frightening stuff. You're gonna make way more ugly stuff long before you ever make anything pretty. So do not harsh yourself. Do not judge yourself harshly. Be willing to make ugly stuff, because that is the road to, that's like the yellow brick road to the Emerald City. So I pulled out a few kinds of paper that could be useful to have, but not everybody has these things. So photocopy paper, most people will probably have that. That's what I recommend you work with. I also have a piece of just regular tissue paper that was a gift came wrapped in. Tissue paper is fun to work with because it glues down relatively see-through, but it's very fragile. So we're going to take some tissue paper for a test drive and see how that responds. And what I also have here is what is called deli paper. Moving things all over the place. Deli paper is the kind of stuff that your sandwiches come wrapped in. It's flat on one side, shiny on the other side. It comes in a little box. And I have, by the way, all of this stuff is listed, will be in the description box. There's a link to an Amazon store where everything's in one place, and there's also individual links, either way. So here's an example of what kinds of things you can make on deli paper. And what's cool about them is that when deli paper is glued down onto a surface, it becomes see-through. So if I were to glue this down, you can see everything that's underneath it. It doesn't become 100% transparent, but it becomes transparent enough that you will enjoy its see-throughness. Here is an example of a piece of art that I made, and this design with these black lines and little drawn circles is a piece of deli paper that I used to cover another piece of deli paper that I couldn't live with for some reason. And you can see that it's see-through, and it's actually really fun to work with, guys. So when I create things like this, you can see again, nice and see-through. These are so much fun to work into collages because you can't screw up Mother Nature. I mean, even if it's a weed, and all of my things are weeds, you can make some really cool stuff. So let's play around with some paint on different kinds of paper and see what kind of results we get. And I will also try to show you how a technique for basic, for learning actually works. So the first thing I'm going to start out with is I'm just going to use Mars Black, because sometimes it's just easier to choose a color and just work with it and not worry about the color. So I'm going to put down just a couple of small dots, and these are little. You can see these are about the size of my thumb. So the thing with printing with rolling things out with a brayer is that if you just keep rolling back and forth, all you'll do is just keep rolling the paint back and forth. So you want to roll it out and pick it up, and you can see when you put these blobs down, you get these blobs. So you can hear that my brayer click every time I pick it up and put it down. I'm going to roll out a fairly thin area of paint, and you get a blank sheet. Roll it off onto this photocopy paper, and you can see every impression that's on your plate will actually show on your print. I'm going to use this same roll-off sheet, I do this often, to pick up this print. And you're basically just pressing it down with your hands. If your hands refuse to flatten like this, let me recommend that you try something like, this is one of those furniture pucks or whatever. That's a way for you to, be able to make a fist and roll things out. Once you've pressed the paper down, you just peel it back. And you can see that even though it's a solid color, it has left a fair amount of design, a fair amount of texture, and a little bit of that is left on this plate. So just to make a point at how simple this really is in terms of working with botanicals, I'm going to make it right away. I'm going to take some titanium white, put a couple of small dots down. That wasn't small, that was large. And on the side, I have these little dried flowers. This was actually a little purple flower from my garden. Somebody planted it long before I came here. But what we're going to do, I'm going to use that little thing, and we're going to make a print right away. I'm going to cut right to the chase. So let me tell you, I know that not everybody lives in the country and has access to stuff, but if you've got a weed growing somewhere and you can flatten it between the pages of a book, you've got a jelly print. Okay, I'm going to take this black thing. I'm going to take this cute little thing and lay it down right there. And when you've got a botanical under there, you're going to see, I think you can see this on the camera, you see these little lines. You want to try to get your fingers right in between the individual little places so that you can get a clean print instead of a blob. And look at what you end up with. That took no technique at all. The only thing that you would probably have to learn by doing that is maybe how much paint to put on. And that leaves a little thing behind, which in our industry, in the gel print industry, is called a ghost print. And if there's enough of a ghost print and you have a piece of paper set aside with something on it, you can transfer that onto it. What I have a tendency to do, though, with mine is just let them dry, and then they end up getting picked up on the next print that I make. So let's try. So isn't that pretty? I mean, this could end up, you could work this into a collage. You could cover a notebook with it. You could cover a glass vase from the dollar store. There's any number of things that you can do with this. That's pretty, and you could also put it on a greeting heart card if you wanted to. Let's try that same technique with a botanical and a piece of deli paper. Deli paper, like I said, has a shiny side, and this is, well, now I can't really tell. I think this is the flat side, and the outside of the fold is the shiny side. I have a tendency to do it this way. Let's give that a go. Let's do it with black paint. I have a tendency to make a fair amount of black and white elements because my tendency as a creative is to not have enough contrast in my work. So black and white can be added to things that are too much the same to punch them up, give them a little bit of life. Get this out of the way. I'm gonna roll off my sheet. I'm gonna put my little botanical right there again. These deli sheets, like I said, I've linked them. You can see everything that happens with these deli sheets. So I can see that I've missed a couple of little places. I want to get the paint all in there. Give this a good roll. You know, let me get a little bit more of that paint in there. And look at what you end up with. A lovely see-through thing. I need things for you to see through. Let's take this and put that down. And look at how you'll be able to see all of those pretty colors through that when you glue it down. Now, I didn't put a lot of paint. If you want a more solid look, you could add more paint to it. But if you look at my plate right now, you'll see that there's quite a bit of paint left over, which, like I said, in our world, we call that a ghost print. And if you're interested in taking that off and putting it on another piece of paper, you can do that. I don't see anything salvageable about that. So I'm going to pick up the rest of what it'll allow me to pick up on this sheet, this roll-off sheet. So I keep those roll-off sheets, just keep going right back into my printing. I also have a tendency to print on both sides of the paper. Let me tell you why I don't recommend that. Because once you put a layer of paint on both sides of your paper, it's not interested in absorbing at all. So look, I got something kind of interesting. There's still a lot of paint left on there, but look at this pretty little thing that ran up the center. So this right now, I'm going to leave, and a lot of times people will clean their plate off. I don't have a tendency to clean my plate. I have a tendency to just keep on going. I am curious about this piece of tissue paper. Tissue paper, like I said, is it's very tender. But I'm going to give it a go. Let me just get a pair of scissors. And so, hey, while I'm doing this, cutting up this tissue paper, anybody that, if you're new, you won't know about the whining I've been doing about technology. But if you've watched a few of my videos, you'll know that I have been having the fits with my technology, because I'm an old gal and technology has moved at the speed of light, and I'm still moving at the speed of sound. So I have a brand new camera, which is not a camera, it's a cell phone. I bought another cell phone because my whole setup here is designed around working on a cell phone. I bought a new cell phone, which is awesome. And I had Apple computers talk me down from the ledge, because my desktop, which I paid a small fortune for, anybody who knows Apple knows that they don't give that stuff away. I paid a small fortune for it 2 years ago, and yesterday, day before yesterday, it would not open up a file. I couldn't open up a picture. I couldn't go on the internet. I couldn't do anything, and I was very frustrated. So they helped me wipe my hard drive clean, reinstall everything with Time Machine, which honestly is magic. They literally, before I lose track, let's see if this is going to come through my hands. It literally restored every single thing, all of the software, my Photoshop, everything got restored, and my computer is like brand new. I'm so happy. Okay, so this is, oh, look what you get. Look what's interesting. Interesting. Look at this. Look at this texture that you get. So tissue paper is, you have to be careful. You can't work it too hard. Now look at the difference in detail between these two pieces. This particular one I could really push down in. With tissue paper, I'm a little bit shy because I know sometimes it can get stuck on your plate and become a pain in the neck. But if all you have is tissue paper, by all means play with tissue paper. I'm pretty sure that this is dry and nothing's going to come of it, but whatever. Okay, so I want to teach you just another thing. I'm going to pull off the rest of this paint and just get that on this roll-off sheet. Okay, that's all that came off. So this is pretty much dry. Now, another little technique for removing dry paint so that you don't have to use baby wipes, which I can't even believe we put this stuff on our babies' bottoms because it is so full of toxic ingredients. I am shocked by it, but it is. So I'm going to just grab my titanium white. I'm going to put probably a little more than I would for a print on this, because I'm going to put this paint down, cover it with photocopy paper. I'm not going to let it dry, but I'm not going to pull it right away. I want all of this to come off, so I end up with a relatively clean plate. So this guy's going right back on top. I don't see anything saving about that. So when you want to clean your plate, it's just like pulling a print, but instead of pulling it off, just let it sit there for a while. A couple of minutes. So I am going to stop the camera and let this sit here for 2 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, a little more time has gone by than a couple of minutes because I got distracted. But I'm going to pull this off. Oh, and look at how beautifully it's taken almost every drop of paint off. And now you end up with a very, oh, I am so handicapped without that word. You end up with a very interesting pattern that can be the basis for something that's going to happen next. So what I'd like to do right now is play with these prints and just, I don't know, see what happens. I'll play around with different kinds of paper. I've got a bunch of different little plant life things on the side. I will also pull out some texturing material so that we can level this up just a little bit. This is also a basic technique, and I'd like to show you some of the things that you can find around your home so that you're not running off and giving Amazon all your money, because you don't need to buy stuff to do this. You've got a lot of stuff at home. Hold on. All right. What I have here is a pile of things that I found around the house that you might have around your house. So I won't go in depth into some of the homemade textures that you can find because I have a video on it. I don't know how to do this, but I'll figure it out. Maybe in the description I'll put a link in the description if you want to watch an entire video on this. But for now, I want to just play around with some basic stuff that I have in this tray. And by the way, this tray is from the dollar store, and I have a giant pile. I might have 25 or 30 of these things piled up, and they're full of stamps, and they're full of little dried plants like so, all kinds of things like this, handmade stamps, glue gun stencils. Yeah, you might want these. So if I feel like talking, I'll talk, but if I don't, there's always my brother's beautiful guitar music. So I'm just going to play around for a little while, and you can watch me. All right, so I am going to add Payne's Gray. Actually, ooh. So I created, let me just tell you, I created bottled Liquitex paint because it's easier to squirt on. And all I did was add a little bit of water and a little bit of what they call medium. And all it does is extend the paint so that it will still stick to your paper. It does make it a little more see-through. But what ends up happening is you get a very easy to spread, thinner, more transparent layer, which I am new at playing with. So this is going to be interesting. I'm sorry, I'm not going to laugh every time I use that word, but it is kind of funny. This little doily I have worked with before, and it leaves behind some lovely stuff. Pull that on a piece of copy paper. Look at what you get when you just take a doily and lay that down. And look at how much texture is in there. Over here, I'm going to try another botanical print. I don't have very much paint here because I really just want a thin layer of it. And look, I'm not even going to bother to spread it out on the whole entire thing. I'm going to just leave it like that. This is my favorite. These are my favorites to work with because these plants, I don't know where I got them. Well, they might be stuck together, but they are stuck together. They are very durable. Oh, I can tell. These are definitely weeds. They've got little yellow flowers on them. And by the way that you lay these down, if you want it to look like this, you need to lay it down like this, because once you pull your print, it comes out the opposite. So I'm going to do that. I love this. Look at how pretty that is. Look at how pretty it is. And what if you put a frame over it to isolate things? What if you want to feature it on something and put a little circle over it and cut that out, which I think is, this is lovely. It's lovely, guys. Let's play with some, let's do Payne's Gray again. What happens if I bring a little bit of light blue permanent? This is another Liquitex color that I put in this little bottle. See what I'm doing, beginners? See what I'm doing? If you put a blob down and just give it a spin, now you've got an interest. I'm going to have to stop that. Now you've got a color that is going to be fun to look at. And I should like to try this little weedy flower. Nah, I'm going to try it on this. I don't think it's going to be successful because see how this is blue and that is blue? It may not do it, but it's all an experiment. The only way you know how things work is to just keep doing it. So a couple of comments that I've received on some of my videos where I create collages out of these prints is, how do I make these papers? I make them exactly the way we're making them now. And I keep going. Still think that's pretty. I keep going until I don't want to go anymore. Q-tips laid down in a row and wrapped with masking tape. Bottle caps from things left over in my kitchen. A Lego guy from my yard. So it's winter in New Hampshire, although it's making signs of spring out there. My daylilies have poked their little heads up from the ground, which does not mean that we're not going to get snow. It just means that right now we're not going to get snow. So when the weather returns to your part of the world where you can go out in nature and get some things, I highly recommend it, because it is so much fun to work with these plants. Even if you're not, like, a lot of people can't draw. I draw, but I mean, I draw comics. My stuff is it's very childlike looking. I don't, oh, look at how nice that is. See what I mean about a little bit of paint being left over? And if you lay it down properly, you can get a really clean print. This is going to go back in. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's going to be yellow. That's kind of fun. Let's see what happens with this. So full disclosure, guys. I'm new. I'm new on YouTube. Been on since New Year's, since the first day of 2025 was when I posted my first video. And up until then, I could not force myself to make art. I'd have to be in really high spirits to be able to do it. I couldn't force myself to do it because I was so afraid I was going to make ugly art. So ridiculous. It might be from being in business and, try all these new things in business, and people would either buy it or not, many times not. So it was a little hard on my ego. I have these that I played with the other day off camera because I thought I was on camera, but that was a total lie. I'm going to just pull some of this. I learned that technique, what I just did, from Carrie the Crafter, who creates really fun stuff, multiple layers. And he'll do something, I think he calls it something like a kiss, something like that. And you end up with some details that you might not have, you can't plan for it. So I'm going to pull this, and pull that all off, see what happens. So one of the things I'm going to do off camera in a minute, I'm going to go and dig through my botanicals and find some large things, because these are lacy and they sometimes want to be by themselves. But the ones that don't want to be by themselves, that can really add a very strong component to your art, are the larger ones, BRB. I want to try something. Let me see if you can, I don't know if you can see this. All right, the back of there's a part of the leaf that's smooth, and the part of the back has all of the texture on it. So I'm going to recommend that we place the texture side down. I'm going to show you a technique. Hold on. This is still basic stuff, guys. It's all just experimentation. I don't have something prepared for that. I'm going to take these. I'm going to place the textured side down. I'll show you why in a minute. Let's just do that. Okay, watch this. Vicki Reed, that I learned this technique from. So she peels it back, removes the leaves, and leaves that lovely little design behind it. Okay, let me get these off. And puts it right back down in place. Watch what happens. Instead of seeing this big see-through plain thing, watch what happens next. So that will make a very interesting layer on top of something else. I'm going to keep going. I need to stop talking because I'd like to get into my zone for a minute here. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to keep going. And if I had used a better color, that would be very it'd be very interesting to to see this with a not so homely color. Would have been better. So you can see I'm going over and over the same pieces of paper multiple times with that little bit of yellow shining through. That's a very fun little thing. That's up. I'm challenged. This one makes me want to. I don't know what I want to do with it. I'm going to. Let's try parchment, just because it's here. It's just a dirty yellow. I mean, a dirty white. I might actually. You'll see. I'll show you what I'm going to do. I want to get rid of some of that because it's so not awesome. That'll go back in. It's going to need more. I don't know what it's going to need, but it's going to get more. I'll keep going until I'll let it dry for a little while. I think it's had its share. Let's see what we can do. See what we can do with some of these deli prints. Deli pages. I'm going to go back to black. I'm putting a little bit more paint on this time than usual to see if I can get. I'm just looking at what I'm going to roll off on, so I'm not searching for it. See if I can get a really nice impression of some of these botanicals. I'm going to lay these little guys on it sideways. So nice to be able to see exactly what you're getting. Now you can just press right down and get really clean little prints. You can see all the places that you'd miss if you couldn't see it. You get really nice impressions. There you go. Now you've got two small-sized ones that you can use on a greeting card if you want to. I want to show you what happens when you do this technique with white paint. Do it on white, the matte side down. Because this paint is so light, it won't be as revealing, but you can still see what you pressed down. needed something dark. No, that's dark enough. No, it's not. Give me something dark. Look at what happens. So now you've got that pretty see-through area. Glue it down. It's got a little bit of blue shining through it, more texture shining through it. These are actually quite lovely. I know that when I watch a lot of YouTube channels teaching us how we should run our channels, it's not that I don't listen to them. It's that when I'm doing this kind of creative work, let me create some things while I'm talking. When I'm doing this kind of creative work, and I try to work with a plan, I don't get results that I'm interested in at all. I get results, but I find the process much more enjoyable if I just allow it to be different, you know, just allow it to be complicated. That pretty color that came off of that. So that's what I'm going to allow myself to do today. Oh, let's do it. Boy, I've got did you notice that my short-term memory is not awesome? Let's just do this. I'm laying this rug thing down. I'm going to hit it with a brayer to spare myself getting paint all over my hands. Yeah, let's do that again. Ooh. That is so pretty. This is so pretty. I'm going to take this and pull up what's left because I did put a lot of paint on there. So when you get dark, you want to cover it with light. When you start out light, you want to cover it with dark. That is this. Wow. I love it. And I love this as well. Okay. I'm going to give those just a few minutes to dry so that they're not so washclothy. And then I'm going to do something similar on top of this. So this is really not light or dark, but this is lighter than black. So I'm going to go back in with some black on this one. Let's try that. And let's see what happens with this when we go over that brush. So pretty. So pretty. When I'm working with white, instead of covering the whole thing, sorry for the sounds, instead of covering the whole thing with white, I'm going to cover it partially with white. Kind of make it look, see how I'm like raggedy edging it and stuff? This is just a cork. Okay, just a little bit of extra texture. Makes a big difference. I have a tendency to forget about it because I fall so in love with the botanical. Like I'm in any way responsible for how beautiful it is. That will end up being another layer, but look at what happens rather than covering up the whole entire side. Okay, I think we're winding down. So let's take an inventory of what we've done, what I've done with your help, because again, I probably wouldn't be here if you were not here. Let me just roll this off on something. Okay, so we've got that sticky little thing. This. These are all done on copy paper. And these all look fairly focal pointish in terms of how you might use something like this. These all feel like they're going to earn their place as a focal point. That little guy. These that I started using that kiss technique that I learned from Kerry the Crafter, who I keep calling Sheree the Crafter. So I've got some sheets here that they'll still get some love on another project. And let's take a look at some of these deli paper things that I've done. Leaves with a lot of detail. To be honest with you, I think this is beautiful, but I prefer these silhouettes. Look at how contrasty they are. Look at how just all by themselves they are stinking adorable. This little guy. This piece of tissue paper. Wrinkly, but soft like toilet paper. When you glue it down, it's awesome. A little bit of white background with a clear botanical. And this one is going to end up going back in to become something more. So I've used, let me show you how I store my little flowers. I just put them in little envelopes. Try to keep them from sticking to one another because I get really sad when they don't survive. And if you're tender with them, if you treat them with respect, they will last for a very long time and you will be able to use them over and over again. Because right now, everything out in my yard is a stick. Eventually, it'll be something softer. So I've come to the end of what I want to show you today, and I would like to thank you for coming. If you're still here, thank you for sticking to the end. My name is Sheree Burlington. I'm an artist, an errant, an angel mom, and I like making art with you guys because you're interested and you're engaged, and my comments are full of your lovely comments and critiques, and I just love it. So thank you for being here, and I hope to see you in my feed again. Thank you. Bye.